Alright guys, this is part 2 of the LED mod, which is also going to have our tail repair, modification, not repair, where we go ahead and get this additional rudder hinge in here so that we can eliminate the play here that some people have had problems with. I can't say that the thing is horrible, but I think the rudder or the yaw authority on this plane has got to be one of the weak points of the plane. If you can even call it a weak point. It's been very good otherwise. So we just got done soldering these 3 wires to these 3 individual LEDs, and they're in series, and they're very bright with this 1/4 watt 100 ohm resistor, so we'll probably go ahead and stick with that. I'm going to just peel this tape up. Hopefully all hell doesn't break loose when I do this. No, it didn't. Awesome. Okay, so plugging it back in. Okay, it looks like our 3rd light is no longer lit. We're going to figure out which. Yeah, it looks like this bottom is just not quite making contact. So we'll go ahead and de-energize the circuit. Let's get this trimmed up and then we'll probably do a little touch up. That's blinding, guys. That mucilage comes right off though when you really want it to. That's awesome. Totally awesome. Guys, I didn't expect that would work so good. It's like my own little double-sided tape. And now we've got this little light assembly that we can use on the back of that plane. I'm just going to grab this and hold this solid. I'm going to pull some sheath up because the heat has allowed that to shrink back a little bit. Alright, so now we're going to re-energize this, and that'll give us the opportunity to go ahead and tell if we made contact. We might try it without re-energizing it first. Cleaning the hot tip. Guys, it's always important to keep your tip clean. Always. Oh yeah, that might be there. I hope so. Alright, so let's see if that turns on now. It's got a little adhesive backing from the mucilage too now. That's awesome. Yes! That's fairly intense too. I'm happy with that. I could show you in a dark corner, except there isn't. You see the shadow it's casting? It's bright in here. It's enough light to cast shadows. It's enough light to blind me, that's for sure. So I am going to power it down. We can shut the soldering iron off for now. One quick tip: when you shut your iron off, go ahead and clean it and give it a good rub down. It makes for a little bit of a stinky area for a minute, but it's definitely worth it. So we'll just leave this in here and we can peel this out. So now we need to get this LED mounted into the back of the plane. So usually try to detangle these wires if they are tangled. They're not too bad on this plane. Now obviously we're going to try to get those wires from the tail boom all the way up to where we can do something useful with them. And this plane, I believe, has just a hollow body all the way back, and it's always better to know that before you start this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I usually determine that, and it can be as simple as holding this up to a light. Since it's plastic, it's a little bit trickier. I'm just going to grab this light down. This is just an LED light, and I can just shine it like this. That looks fairly hollow. Usually there's, on a really high quality plane, you'll have some sort of reinforcements in here. Let's try this, it'll be easier with my hands. I don't think we have anything in there. Now we're going to go ahead and just grab a flashlight and see if that works better. This is not a really expensive, super nice flashlight or anything. And I'm wondering if it's going to have to be dark to tell. So we'll go in the bathroom. Okay, so we'll shine this into the fuse. Yes, beautiful. You can see it's glowing. Obviously, if there was framework in there, you would totally be able to see it. See? Awesome. Okay, great. So now, if that's hollow, which I suspected it was, then we should be able to drop the cable without even putting any sort of a fish tape or piece of wire or anything like that even. And we're done. We'll just glue this right onto the back of the fuse. Okay, so you see this hole here. We're just going to kind of get our wires fed through there. And there's going to be those two plastic things that reach up to the top here and hold the vertical stabilizer on, and also kind of pass through the horizontal stabilizer to kind of hold everything together. Oh, I ran into something. One of those wires did. Okay, so maybe I hit the first frame member. I can see them in there. I don't think they hit anything yet. I'm just going to let gravity help me along. Just kind of wiggling the plane. And even if we don't use this whole cable, which we surely won't, I'll still need to feed all of it through, and I can pull the rest through once I get a handle on it. Oh yeah, I see one of them there. Where's the other one? Oh, that's way back there for some stupid reason. Worst case scenario, we'll tape it. We'll tape it together. We'll go forceps for this. Forceps are easy to get in these tight spots. Okay, so suppose you've got one wire that's still straggler in there. What you can do is you can probably tape the other wire on there. We'll just use a little chunk of this scrap tape. This tape is not necessarily tape I'd want to use for another project, but it's just good to grab quick for something like this. And just hold those two together. Feed it into the hole. And then I can just grab my wire that's already made its way out. And just pull the whole thing in. Just like this. And then that straggler will come through with it. Just a matter of a couple of seconds. Except that it's really being resistant, and I'm not sure why. This canopy is sort of obstructing my view. Ow. It's a little sharp. Jeez. Okay. We can lay that out of the way. Alright, I'm just going to try this again. It wasn't that hard to put it in. I must have caught whatever I caught that other wire on. So, yeah, the tape peeled. Shoot. Sorry, guys. Alright, so here it is. I'm just going to grab the ends. Tape them together at the front. I'm just going to bring it to a sharp tip. Alright, that will be easier. So now the reason I show you these pitfalls, guys, firstly because I'm not editing my videos yet. I might someday. But right now the only editing is pausing the video, okay? I just don't have time to edit videos. And also, secondly, it helps to show you the type of pitfalls that you'll run into. Because if I run into them, you'll run into them too. And that's one thing that annoys me about videos that are always edited, highly edited, because then you end up with this perception that, oh, it's so easy, anybody can do it. Well, anybody can do it if they're persistent enough. But, you know, we all know that's a bunch of BS. If there's something I don't like more than watching 3.5-hour videos, it's a bunch of BS. Whatever, I like them too. I like the short videos, they're nice. Okay, so now you can see my little antenna holder there. So I'm not 100% sure. Do I want to go all the way up there? I think I want to go all the way up there, guys, because that'll get me to where my wires are. Where my wires are. What in the heck am I running into now? I'm running into some drag. I don't know why, though. Oh, gorgeous. There it is. Right there, guys. Okay, so now once this is in, hypothetically, we could do the mechanical portion of this, but I guess I still kind of want to know where it's going to be, and I don't want to accidentally pull that through. That'd be a mess. Well, the other thing too is I'm debating about, should I have just ran this wire in through the frame, just cut a new hole? Shoot, I wonder if that would have been better. And these are the pitfalls that I always seem to show you folks at YouTube. That will be insanely bright, okay? And it's going to work very effectively. You'll be able to see it from pretty much every angle when I'm done. Now I'm just trying to decide if I want to get rid of that blue wire by poking a hole and then refeeding it. It is going to be easier on the hinge. You know what? We did all this for nothing. We're going to redo it again, and I'm not going to make you watch this time. I'll come back. We're going to poke a hole in there. Alright, folks, so we've got a drill bit. Now, I normally don't use drill bits to do this sort of thing. I would normally use something hot. And the reason I do that is because it's harder to control. It's harder to control the hole if you use a drill on these strange plastic surfaces. I'm just double checking my position here. So it's right at the top of that. We're going to try it with a drill, and if this doesn't work, then we'll come back to it with another material, another hot thing. But we'll see if the drill works. Yeah, it's just too stinking hard to get it started. You'd have to do a punch. Well, by the time you do a punch, you might as well just melt a hole in it. So you could use the drill to be hot, but I have all these little pieces of wire that I prefer. It's a little easier for me. Make it glow. And just make the hole about as big as you think you need it. Which that should be plenty. And then you can just set this aside and use sharp X-Acto knife to trim the excess. You end up with a nice clean cut then. And good luck doing that with the drill. I suppose you probably could in a perfect world if you spent enough time on it. Half the battle in this hobby is trying to balance how much ridiculous amounts of time you waste on it to get the outcome you want, and I'm really bad at that. Because I'll spend hours on one stupid little detail. Sorry, I got distracted by my Airbus. Okay, so I feel like I'm running into something, so I'm going to flip this over. As you can see, I've set these ottomans on top of my table saw. If you're wondering what those are, they're ottomans for a chair, because it's a lot easier to work at the right height, in my experience, because my back will start bothering me a lot if I have to work low. Why am I not seeing the wire, guys? Okay, we're going to try it again the other direction. Oh, it's because it fell back out. Dang it, when I flipped it over. That's embarrassing. You can see it's touching down on the floor. Let's try this again. This worked good. Okay, so it's got to be going. Got to be going where it needs to go because it just keeps going. Okay, so I got some real resistance there. So now this time I'm going to set this wire underneath the frame of the plane. Oh yeah, wowzers! It made it all the way up. That's awesome. Okay, great. So now I can just pull the excess. Keep pulling it until you're where you need to be. So we've got quite a bit of extra here. So now we'll. This thing came out of a Hobby King plane that I bought a long time ago. And I've been using it forever, so it works really nice. Keeps it from tipping over. No damage to the fuselage at all. Okay, so now I need to make this bend here, but I gotta be careful not to break my... Whoa, I about bend it backward. I want to make sure I don't break my solder joint. You know, because even though this wire is still malleable and a little bit ductile with the solder in it, it's going to be a whole lot less than it were before. Okay, so now, see, I've reserved all this area now to work on that hinge. So normally at this point I would just double check using all this crap to make sure that everything is still working. So I'm going to do that again. Well, that's weird. I'm plugged into my ESC. And my ESC is plugged into here, but nothing is turned on. It's as though I screwed something up somehow. So now I need to do a little bit of diagnostic work. Oh, there it is. I think my wire was just unplugged a little bit. So we'll just carry this whole test unit over. Just set it up on here. We'll take our tape off the tip. Because you know what it is, you gotta keep your tip clean all the time, guys. It's the moral of the story. Oh yes, oh yes, 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 yes. Wait, yes, yes, no. So we have to figure out why this last one is not turning on. And suppose it didn't. That would not be the end of the world, but it's still kind of annoying. Okay, so I need to get the soldering iron. This is why I do this, I guess. Unfortunately, I'll need to plug in the soldering iron that's going to need to heat up now. So I will spare you guys the boredom of waiting for that. And in the meantime, we will figure out if that broke or what. Sometimes these LEDs, these surface mounts, do not like to be manipulated like this. But even if we do nothing and we just step that on there, that's going to be enough to give us our tail light. You want to make sure it's low enough that it clears the view of the rudder. And if it doesn't totally clear it, you'll just trim a little bit away from the rudder. But when you're flying away from yourself, this is going to be very intense. You'll definitely be able to see it. I do prefer to have them on the end of the rudder because I just think it looks really cool. But the trouble is here, I just don't know if I want to go through that trouble. Because then when you turn, you can see it move. It's really kind of cool. Oh, guys, I'm not doing it. I've already got a plan. I'm sticking to it. Soldering iron should be coming up to heat. We'll come right back once I get this light restarted. Alright, guys, so I just got the soldering iron hot, and I walked over here and worked this out. There's 3 lights on. One trick. I usually simulate everything with an actual BEC off of a electronic speed control and ESC. But in this case I used 1S to make it less bright. You can use 2S to make it a little bit more bright, and then 3S of course would make it brighter. But in our case I was just running it straight off of the LiPo. And in this case I'm going to go back to using my BEC to test everything. Okay, and as you can see I've got 1, 2, 3 lights on. So that's why we test stuff, I guess, guys. Because no matter what you do, you'll have that happen if you do lighting this way, eventually. No matter how careful you are. And so since it's so hard to see with the light on, because the exposure of the camera, I'm going to shut that back off. I can sort of see where things are, but it's actually still tough for me too. And that mucilage is still, there's a little bit on there, and I'm extremely pleased with the way that worked. So I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit more of this mucilage. It's what they use to hold foam models together. I buy it from Hobby King. I've tried to find it on Amazon because I know that I've got a little bit easier time showing people the Amazon links, because not everybody has to have a Hobby King account. Okay, so I'm just going to throw a little bit on there for now. This is just going to hold it in place, and then the CA is going to hold it down and protect the contacts from moisture. Okay, we can just kind of stick that down. Normally I'd pull it in and out and stuff, but I don't want to damage the wiring. It's a little bit on the delicate side. Okay, so that's held there. Now, one thing about this mucilage is once we get the CA in there, we'll do our first coat, and the first coat will actually help to bond it down to the plastic, but then the kicker, if you get too aggressive with it, will actually break this stuff down. And you could make this stuff all come off of your toothpick, and you don't believe me, but just go ahead and try it sometime on your own time. And we'll use some kicker and some medium CA. This is not foam safe, so don't get it on this control surface. The plastic, of course, it'll be fine for that. There's a million different types of adhesive out there. I use this Bob Smith Industries Instacure medium, and I refill my bottles. That's how my bottles get to looking so bad. I'll just put a little drip on the top. Just kind of carry it over the surface a little bit, but I don't want to get too carried away on the first coat, because it will have a tendency to run just a little bit. Okay, so now while that's not started to run yet, see how this fluid is in there? I'm just kind of dipping that into the fluid, and then I get this nice little drip on the end. And just give it a little bit, and it'll make that stuff set up in about 2 seconds, maybe 3. But it will run off itself, and it'll make you think that the CA is running. So have a Q-tip handy in case the CA does actually run. See? It's already dry. It's dry, chemically reacted. So now that would be enough to protect, the connections and whatnot. But I'm going to do a little bit more. And when we're done, we'll actually rough up the surface just a little bit to help it refract the light. So this becomes a lens for us as well. And you will be amazed how big of a difference it makes. It's very hard to capture this on film for the simple fact that it just overexposes the camera to the light. It's like, hey guys, let's look at this light. Let's study it. Look how good it looks. It looks the same. Every light looks the same on camera. It just looks like a big white blob of nothing. But in real life, you can see it in person. You can pick up on the details. You can see how glary the light is, and the warmth of it, or the coldness, the absence of warmth, or whatever. So you just have to try it in person. So now what I'm doing is I'm just building up, give it the shape I want, and this is also going to act as a potentially as a point to drag the tail on that will be sacrificially scraped in the event of a landing where I accidentally end up on a little asphalt or concrete. You're thinking, but that's horrible, Brian. Or your lights are going to get destroyed. Yeah, right. These things will be like the strongest thing on the plane. The plane will be disintegrated in a million pieces on some mountainside someday, and these lights will be intact perfectly. Okay, maybe that's a slight exaggeration. But you should have seen it when I crashed this A320. I had spent like 60 hours on lighting. It was ridiculous. And I got it out of my sight just a little bit too far, and I was having some problems. And I said, I gotta bail. So I went this way. I probably could have saved it going this way, but there was too many people in that direction. So it was a very sad day. And then I crashed it. I didn't cry, but it was very sad. But the point of that story is that the wiring, the extreme amount of wiring inside of this plane, actually all the lighting worked after I crashed it. It was crazy. It was in like 6 pieces. It did not look that good. I just haven't ever gone through the trouble of finishing it. Okay, so sorry guys, that was just a total detour into oblivion. I'm going to get back to this. Stay focused, Brian. And as you can see, I've done what, like 5 or 6 layers now, maybe 4 layers, 5 layers, something like that. I'm not sure. I haven't been counting. You guys might be. If you are, how many did I do? Right in the middle. Now, if you spread kicker on there, that CA would run all over the place. Be a huge mess. That's fine. It wouldn't hurt anything. Okay, so now that that's set up, you can see that it's kind of, almost, sort of, but maybe. You know, it's starting to get that rounded shape to it. And obviously these LEDs are square. So when you get it to a rounded state, then that will act as a bit of a light diffuser. And you'd be amazed how much that light will be visible now from here. Not just from here. It'll be visible to probably, I don't know, like 270 degrees. Maybe a little bit more. And in real life, the FAA would not like that. They would want it to be pointed only backward. 180 degrees, straight back. Straight back to the sides a little teeny bit. But this is not an FAA thing. This is just for helping you see it. And in real life, you're trying to tell the air traffic, you know, like this is my tail end, and this is my right side, and this is my left side. I want to be able to see all 3 to make a visual cue as to my pitch, roll, and yaw condition. That's why I insist upon a taillight. That's why I added a taillight to the Cirrus SR22T over there. It's the only light I added. It's the only light that was needed. So now that we're done with this, well, actually we'll do maybe one more coat. I grab a sanding block. I actually got a new one of these the other day, and it is awesome. I didn't realize how much better they are when they're fresh, but you've used something like this for so long, you just kind of assume it is a tool. Well, they get worn out evidently. It's so weird. Sorry, I had to clean off the material there. So now I'm just basically trying to rough it up, and you will see it now. And you see, guys, you can see the light from this angle. See how bright that thing is? It's like insanely bright. And I mean, it's bright in here. I've got like, I don't know, 150 watts of LED lighting. That's a lot of wattage for lights on LED level. No, they're 13 watts each, and I have like 10 of them or 15 of them. I don't know. It's a lot. This is very bright in here. Come in here in the middle of the night, and that cycle that your brain uses gets all screwed up. Immediately think it's noon. Okay, so we're gonna go just a little bit more on this. In this last coat, we don't have to actually rough it up again, because that will seal in a certain amount of that refraction. I personally think it looks cooler, totally clear, but it works a whole lot better this way. So I'm going to go ahead and de-energize this so you can see what we're having. Oh no! Oh no! Guys, I dripped. But as you can see, everybody lived. One drip. One drip. Fresh Q-tip. And for the record, that adds an extremely small amount of weight. To a plane this size, that's nothing. I mean, it's always something, but you know what I mean, guys. So the next step for us is going to be to probably get the tip cleaned off. You know, like I said, that's a very important part of life, is to get your tip clean. And then I will move on to actually connecting the wires up front. and then this part of it will be done, and we no longer need our test fixture to energize it. We can go ahead and power it on with a LiPo flight pack, which would be a 2200 3S in this case. Rather than this 1300 3S, it actually only ends up operating like a 2S because we have one bed cell in it. So I'm going to pause it while I get that set, and we'll come right back to you. Alright folks, so we've got the plane flipped over. Now we just need to land these two wires to power and ground, but we have to put our resistor in line with the ground side. Okay, so the one with the black line. So we've got these different choices here, and we're going to go ahead and pick one of those wires to tap. You could tap the ESC wire that goes into the receiver, or you could tap any of the servo wires. And I just prefer to tap one of the servo wires so that there's, if we have something fail, we'll be more likely to still be able to get the plane back. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so in order to get this next step done, we're going to have to lift up the receiver off of this Velcro. We had mounted it on Velcro. Just trying to be careful not to damage our antennas, which are on that plastic thing that supports them. And this is what goes up to the wing for a quick decoupling there. And then of course we have possibly got enough to pull it through this way. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to have to do. Okay, so we've got this pulled out now. And we've got the wires that go over to the elevator and rudder. And I guess if I had to pick one that I wanted to voluntarily give up, in duress, it'd probably be the rudder, because I can land with the rudder failed. So I'm just going to move the rudder. Okay, so it's obviously this one here. So we can grab this wire. And this works out nice, because then I can go ahead and tap this rudder power and ground wire. And I can just stick this servo, or stick the receiver back where it belongs here in a minute. But for now, I'm going to pull this above. I'm going to slide the receiver as close as I can, so it's as easy as possible to do this. And I can grab my two wires and pull them back to me. Okay, so I've done this a number of times on the other build videos. I'm going to go ahead and get my soldering iron warming up. Grab your sharp X-Acto knife. And you're going to basically work this between the red and the black. If you can support it on both sides like this, you'll have fairly good luck. And then just use the blade to walk it back and forth very carefully, okay? Then you can take those wires and just pull them a little bit apart. You don't want to overdo it. Now go ahead and grab just like the same thing, and you're going to separate the signal from the power. The signal, of course, is white in this case. It's got the Futaba style color code. And then we'll go ahead and grab and pull the white away. And now we can access the power and the ground here. Power is quite simple. So we'll do that. Well, I guess we'll just do whatever we get to first. Strippers. Make sure that the head is small enough to fit in between your opening there. Now remember, we're not cutting the wire, we're just stripping the top of it. So we grab it and we just pull it back a little bit, and you expose the copper here. Alright, so once that copper is exposed, see I broke one strand. That's unfortunate. It's not the end of the world by any means, but it's not my goal. Okay, so then I can take this wire. Make sure you leave yourself a little bit of slack to work with it. Okay, because remember, you can tuck the slack back here. You don't want tons of slack, but you want some. And we have a pretty significant amount of wire here left. We can use that for another project now. Okay, so we're going to take and strip the tip of the positive lead, verifying it again. And without having this tinned, preferably, we'll twist that. Now we're going to go back to the X-Acto knife blade for this step, which is where we actually take the X-Acto knife and we kind of split the copper, and then we make a little loop. See that loop, guys? That loop is going to allow us to feed this wire through, and once it's through, then we can take and just fold it upon itself. And it doesn't need to be super robust, because remember, we're going to be soldering this. It's going to be fairly strong in and of itself there. That's not to say that a solder joint is infinitely strong, but it's certainly going to be stronger than nothing. Just touching, like this, it would work, but you definitely need to solder this. Okay, so now you want to make sure this lines up the way you want it to go in a permanent sense. And then we're going to get some solder, and we're just going to kind of wrap any of the little stragglers around. And it's close enough there. So this should be hot. So make sure we're not tangled. Pull it out of the wall so we can walk it over. We'll just clean the tip real quick right before we go at it. You always going to start with a clean tip, guys. You never want to use a dirty tip for any of these steps. Okay, get it hot, solder it, let it cool a second. Now we'll go ahead and get this plugged back in so it can stay warm. Now on the negative side, it's a little bit more complicated because we've got to put our resistor in there, which we already sized out. We used a 100 ohm. I think it's a 1/4 watt resistor. So now you're thinking, well, how the heck are you going to prevent that from shorting out, Brian? Very good question. Twofold. I will either use a piece of red tape in this case, because it just happens to be on the red side of things, or I will use glue, or I will use a little bit of both, and in this case I'll probably do both. And that's going to work like crap, because evidently I got some sawdust on there, so that is a no-go. That'll be good for marking something, not necessarily good for protecting a circuit that's volatile to a certain extent. So in this case, we'll grab a small portion of this stuff. Remember, we're doing two different techniques to insulate this wire. So we're just going to push that down and wrap it fairly tight. And then when we're all done, with this, we're gonna glue over this whole bundle. Now when we do our ground, we'll do our ground at just a slightly different spot, which means the length will need to be a little bit different. But that will keep them away from one another in the event of a failure of our awesome tape job here. Okay, so remember, we're not trying to cut the wire, we're just trying to open it up. Expose that. Now take and separate the wires like this. Just spin the blade to make a loop. Now there's a couple of different orders you can do this in. I'm just going to do it the way I'm grabbing stuff. Okay, so I'm looping back onto itself here. And we already did the heat test. And the heat test is super simple. You just make sure it doesn't get hot to the touch. And when you have an electronic that gets hot, doesn't mean it's going to fail, but most electronics are not designed to be hot all the time. That's why we have heat sinks. Doesn't mean they can't have some heat to them. Side cutters here, so we can trim this off, the excess, and I will keep this. These things are really nice to use as leads for breadboards, in case you want to solder them onto an otherwise not so good sized wire. Okay, so now we can solder that at our leisure. So I will wait and come right back to soldering it here in a minute. Just going to make sure I don't see anything weird with that. And I'll bring that up to about where I think I need it. And we got our positive and negative for another project there. So we'll strip this back. And we'll come back over and just kind of solder it all together at the same time to make things a little quicker. Haha, quicker. Have you seen how long this video is, Brian? No, because I'm filming it. But it's long. Alright. So now we can slide this over, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab a bit of heat shrink. Needs to be a decent size heat shrink too. Obviously this isn't going to go over the splice all the way. It's just going to cover up some of it because we have that exposed lead from the resistor there. Just feed that through. Double it back. And if you really want to get tedious about it, you can try to wrap it around itself and all that good stuff. But you know what? There is a limit to how much time even I can waste on a project like this. Alright, so now we solder. Same process, guys. Dip it and wipe it. Ow. It's kind of rough. Yes, it is. But you want a clean tip, guys. It's worth the pain. Okay, so I'm going to double this back by folding it. That will remain malleable even after we get our solder in there. So we'll come in here and hope I don't set off the fire alarm. That'd be super annoying. I don't really mind a little bit of ingestion of deadly lead, but I do mind setting off the fire alarm. That's annoying for everybody else in the house. Okay, so I'm trying to get this wire into the position I'd like it to be permanently. Of course, it's not permanent yet, but it will be in a moment. Because this joint will be nice and stiff and difficult to reposition. Okay, so we got our nice solder joint there. And then we'll get this back into its holster. I guess we could actually plug in the power at this point before we even heat shrink this. Okay, so now at this point, we need to go ahead and take this. Yeah, there's a bit of a sharp point there. You get a sharp point like that, you'll want to address that. I mean, you'll not always see them, of course. But if you do, I'd highly encourage you to either address it by clipping it off like that, or taking your still hot soldering iron and just touching that spot. You'll find out real quick those little sharp edges make a really nasty mess later when the heat shrink goes to shrink down. Okay, that was less than desirable experience, but it's still less sharp now than it was. Just squishing the soft solder there. Now I'm going to try to make this nasty bend with my heat shrink, which is always a challenge. But I'll get it for sure. Okay, now we'll still have to protect that area a little bit. We're just going to get our old trusty lighter. When I say trusty, I mean total piece of crap that hardly ever works. But yet I keep it because I'm too cheap to replace it. Okay, see how we have the thickness of the resistor there? The heat shrink won't be easily allowed to slide now. It's quite hot still. Big surprise, right? Sometimes I'll take and squish it down on itself for extra strength where I want some strength. Now on this one, since it's the ground side of things, I'll try this piece of tape. If it holds decent, then we should be good. Should be good on this joint. Yeah, that's gonna be okay for now. So the next step, of course, is just a real quick test. We're not using a flight pack. We're just going to stick in this little 1300 milliamp. And when I say flight pack, I mean the actual pack that we would normally use. Oh yeah, baby. There it is. Awesome. Okay, so now that we have that done, we can go ahead and get this stuffed into the airframe, which is an important step. So now we need to reconstitute this wire so it's got a little bit of strength to it. And we'll reconstitute it by actually taping it as a little lovable bundle of joy. And we'll use some fresh tape for this instead of being cheapskates, because this one's pretty important. It's going to give us a little bit of mechanical strength, and it's also going to keep things aligned the direction we want them to be aligned. So we're not going to cut a huge piece, because a huge piece will take several wraps to get around, and it's going to be a pain in the butt. And I cut it at an angle so that it will automatically want to wrap in the direction that I want it to go. And it looks like we'll probably have to use two pieces to reach all the way back to the other half of the equation, the negative side. So let's bring it back a little bit further. Already got our angle cut. Of course, it's cut the wrong angle now, so we'll just be smart and put it on the right way. And this step is definitely awkward because of the nature of its position. But it's fine, because it's only going to be awkward for a few seconds, and then it's going to disappear forever, and we'll never know about it again until we have to replace that servo. And then we have to redo that step, which is going to be a pain in the butt. So we're going to hope to not have to redo that servo. So now I'm going to pull this back forward, noticing that these little bundles of joy have undone themselves. Probably because I used tape that had sawdust on it. That was a super intelligent maneuver. So I'll just go ahead and do a fresh piece of proper tape. And that'll hold that together. And then this piece of tape, same scenario, different piece of tape. Let's go lengthwise this time. I really like this plane, guys. My initial thoughts have been very positive. I don't put lights in planes unless I know that they're good, because if a plane isn't good enough to fly at night, then I don't waste my time. And a plane's got to fly pretty decent for me to fly it at night. Forceps. Where are you, forceps? Here they are. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these wires pushed out of the way. And we're going to stick this thing back down centrally located in the plane. Since it's de-energized, I'm going to grab the servo wires, the outputs on the actual board, to reposition this slightly. I'm going to get it positioned where I think I want it, and then I'll press really hard. That allows me to get that thing out. Sweet. Oh, you know what? I don't think I got that far enough back. Yeah. I'll go back a little bit further, guys. So I'm using the forceps to grab on, make sure I get like 3 of those little... Should probably break it free first. Hard on that connection to do that. Oh, that's a lot better. I got it back further. If it's not good enough, we'll know shortly. First time we go to fly it, it'll give us all sorts of grief. Now I just need to get my wires pulled back and out of the way so they don't give us trouble. Might actually put that under the antenna just because it's ugly as sin. I'm just going to pull that up. There we go. Give it a little rotation. Alright guys, so that's pretty much all she wrote. I really appreciate you guys being part of this video series with me. I like to do these things to help you out. I know some people are probably a little bit more advanced. They don't need all the steps. They don't need all the help. But maybe they like the idea. So that's what fast forward's for, just as a quick reminder. These are long video series. I am not oblivious to that fact. It seems that way when I'm filming them, but it just takes a long time to do these things. So maybe someday when I have a crew of people working for me, I can say, go edit this film and make it awesome, instead of insanely long. But until that day, you'll have to use that fast forward bar on the bottom and just scroll along to where you see what you need to see. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy it. Come back for more. We're going to be getting this tail fixed up on the 3rd part of this little mini-series. And 4th, 5th, or whatever it is, we're going to get the red and green lights done. And this plane's going to be ready to fly when the snow stops flying, because it is snowing right now. We had like a blizzard today. And why would there not be a blizzard? You know, since it's spring in Iowa. Exactly. Thanks for watching, guys. Come back for more. Don't forget to like and subscribe. One more shot of the light. This is the tail light, of course. Doesn't really look like much, but guys, believe me, it's going to be much. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.